We are live edition of the Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara. We're going to be talking Browns, our opponents for Cleveland in 2024. Our previews continue. We're in week 6. It'll be the Philadelphia Eagles. Got a special guest for that. Also, hey, a Browns player, a key player, a star player gets extended. We'll talk about that in just a few moments' time. Let's start the show.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara, the sickest Cleveland Browns podcast.
Chubb runs, he's to the 10, 15, he's to the 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. There goes Chubb, he's to the 30, 20, 10, 5, touchdown, Shabba-lubba hub.
It's gonna be sick.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. It is a Tuesday. We're live. We're kicking. We're ready as football is clawing its way back, getting back just a little bit. We have a lot of teams that are entering training camp this week. The Browns will be next week. They'll be heading to the Greenbrier at some point soon, and then it'll be preseason. And before you know it, boom, we'll be popping. We'll be getting ready to go. So I've really enjoyed these season previews, these opponent previews we've been doing for the Browns. Last week, we had the Raiders. We had the Washington last week. Previous to that was the Raiders. This is week 6 of the Philadelphia Eagles. For that, make sure you're clicking subscribe. Click the notifications on. Click like. That's all you got to do. Does us a favor. Also love hearing from everybody in the comment section. Again, what are your expectations for this Browns team this year? How do you think week 6 versus the Eagles are going to go? And anything else you want to say, jump in there. But some news for the Browns. We've been waiting on the Amari Cooper contract extension or rejigging of the contract or something. That news did not come. However, we did get another star player, Dustin Hopkins, right? How long have the Browns been looking for a kicker? How long on this show and my other shows have we been begging for some kicker consistency? And it looks like we have it. Dustin Hopkins, 3-year, $15.9 million extension. So he's locked in. Career year last year, made a franchise record 33 of 36 field goals, career long 58. Remember coming in last year, it was, can he hit beyond 50? Can he do 50? And he did an amazing job. Only got tripped up when he went to go tackle in that Houston game and got banged up. What's going to be interesting, of course, is with this new kickoff rule where it looks like kickers could be more involved in the tackling process. What does that mean for a guy like Dustin Hopkins, who you don't want to do that? That's another avenue to that special teams group. That, boy, it's going to be really interesting to see how NFL teams play that off, because you don't want your kicker, like Ravens don't want Justin Tucker, Browns don't want Hopkins, pick your other guys. You don't want them tackling. You want them kicking. So how do you prepare for that? That's another story there. But Dustin Hopkins, locked in, 33 years old, and 8 something of that 15.9 is guaranteed. So, when you look at the numbers, it's probably going to be a 2-year and the 3rd year they can get out of if need be. But in any case, that's some good news for the Browns there. But today we're going to be talking some fantasy football. We're going to be talking some Philadelphia Eagles, because that is the Browns week 6 opponent. We've been diving deep into these teams and really to try to get to know these clubs before the season starts. So I go to my guy from 97.3 ESPN. It's Josh Hennig to talk some Eagles. Eagles headquarters, they air the games. They do so much coverage with it. And he's wearing his Eagles shirt too. Josh, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Well, it just happened to be the same day I'm jumping on with you.
Yeah.
And it was the same day they had a big Eagles shindig here, because we are the Eagles radio affiliate here in South Jersey.
Right.
So, as you can see over one of my shoulders, I'm always bad at figuring out what shoulder.
I know which.
The
opposite one.
I just put both fingers up and hope the audience figures it out. So, but yeah, I'm still in the studio. I got all my Eagles. Listen, we report a week from the day we're recording this. So
yes.
Eagles are in training camp.
Right. And we have some other teams who are in training camp this week.
Well, the
so Ravens, we'll get back to it.
All the rookies on Saturday, for goodness sake. I mean,
right. We're getting back to football, which is so, you never want to wish the summer away, especially in the climates we live in, but it's it's always good when football is around the corner. And so what I've been doing with these previews, we had you on a couple weeks ago when the Browns were playing the Giants as well, because you're in Giants country also. But it's to really, What should we be expecting? What have the Eagles done in this offseason? What are the expectations going on? We remember a year ago coming out of the draft, it looked like Howie Roseman was just, I don't know, a wizard, magician, however he was able to dance these draft picks and get some phenomenal picks. This year's draft, heavy focus on defense early, first 3 picks actually, and that's an area we know the Eagles had to improve on. How are you feeling about that D?
You know, it's interesting because you mentioned how we viewed Howie Roseman last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the conversations that we have been having here in Eagles country is the fact that, you know, the problem with the team last year wasn't the general manager. It wasn't necessarily the roster construction. So you listen to guys like Lane Johnson, Brandon Graham, Jason Kelsey. They all have basically inferred Darius Slay, right? They've all basically inferred that the problem last year was a coaching issue. So what did the Eagles do? They fired 90% of the staff. They brought in new coordinators, new position coaches. So what's interesting is that, you know, look at your team, the Browns. You guys have a new offensive coordinator, right? Ken Dorsey, former quarterback, I believe, for the Browns at one point as well.
That's one of many, my friend.
Many, right? But the larger point is that, like, you know, you have an organization like the Browns. Andrew Berry's, that is his fault that 12 starters got injured for the Browns last year.
Yeah.
It's not Howie Roseman's fault that Brian Johnson, Matt Patricia, and Sean Desai were all failures at their jobs. So
Matt Patricia's terrible.
Right. Well, that's what I was saying. But I had to list them for the audience that may not, you know, your audience might not know of the horrible coach situation in Philadelphia last year.
Yeah.
What is that? Everyone pointed to the coaches through action and through word. So what does Howie Roseman do? The same thing last year as this year. He says, what do I need to fix? What can I do to help make this team better? And what's interesting is that you saw, what did he do one year? He drafts Jordan Davis. What does he do next year? He drafts Jalen Carter. What does he do this year? He drafts Quinyon Mitchell. It's clear this organization has said we are preparing for the inevitable. The inevitable being Fletcher Cox retired, Jason Kelsey retired. They already have replacements in hand, which brings to the matchup that we had the Browns with you guys coming up, which, by the way, is one of the Eagles' only home 1:00 games this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The Eagles' schedule the last couple of years has been bizarro world. Okay.
You guys are in Brazil too, right?
Well, it's technically a home game, but the Eagles are one of the 9 home game teams, so they technically don't lose a home game. It's more like a home game is sacrificed for the greater good.
Because it's like, because of the 17-game schedule, it's the NFC's year to have the extra home game.
Correct.
I think, right? Yeah.
Right. So the Eagles lost their 9th home game, just like the Jags last year lost 2 of their home games. They actually only had 7.
They could lose more. No one goes to those.
Although I do think it's funny. Do you know the Jags have some of the most expensive concessions in the NFL?
Really?
Like, who was buying concessions for those prices in Jacksonville? Like, come on.
Maybe that's why they don't go. They have to go to London. Browns play them in week 2. Man.
Well, although the other funny thing is, for those who don't know, the Jags are building a new stadium down there. It's supposed to debut like 2028. And so, like, the first question everyone wants to know is not about the Jags games, not about the parking, not about the season. Everyone wants to know is, well, what do we do with the Georgia-Florida college football game every year? Because that game is played in that stadium.
It's probably the most popular game there.
But back to the Birds, as we say.
Back to the Birds.
Back to the Eagles Browns. So you guys are coming in at one of the only 1:00 games in Philadelphia this year. And I'm telling you right now, this is going to be a fascinating matchup because every question that you ask me in this podcast is going to have a direct impact on that game that day at 1:00.
Yeah. Well, it is. And when you look at it from the Browns' perspective, coming in on that week 6, that is the 3rd. I'm just double checking the schedule. The Browns have a weird start to the season because they go home Cowboys, at Jacksonville, which is fine, home to the Giants, then a 3-game road trip, Vegas, Washington, Eagles, and then the Bengals the week after. So the Eagles are at the tail end of that 3-game road series, which is tough. That's
on the flip. obviously on the flip side, the Eagles against the Browns, that's their first game coming out of the bye week.
Or you guys got the early bye.
Yes.
That's really early.
Yeah, week
That
5.
sucks. That sucks.
So let me ask you a question. When you have back-to-back primetime games followed by back-to-back games on the road in the NFC South, you almost feel like you earned that week 5 bye, you know?
Yeah, like the end of, and God, I can only imagine the algorithms and computer programming that goes involved to coordinate all of these schedules beyond our capabilities. But it just seems like, man, like week 5, that's so early because, of course, you run into trouble. Like, that's fine with how you laid out. But, boy, if you're looking like week 8, week 10, it's like, man, could really use a break. We don't got a break. Like, that's you're marching until the end here. So we look at the Eagles, okay? You add the rejig. And what I didn't know, I found out today, the Browns general manager, Andrew Berry, has a twin brother, Adam Berry, who's a VP with the Eagles, VP of operations.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I know Berry was with the Eagles and tries to, that's sort of the blueprint that they're trying to in Cleveland, that same collaboration, analytics. But I didn't know he had the twin brother who worked for the Eagles there. So pretty interesting. It's a real nice, like, I guess it's friendly a relationship you can have between two organizations.
Well, the two things that come to my mind when you say that is, first of all, it's the NBC More You Know should be glad
Yeah.
you're on the screen right now.
Yeah.
For those who are under like the age of like 33, have no idea. Back in the day, they used to have these PSA announcements on NBC. And it'd be like some random actor telling you like to not smoke weed or something.
Yeah, don't do drugs, whatever.
You know? And then they'd be like, the more you know.
Yeah. With the little rainbow star. Boop.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing is that, I would love to be at the Thanksgiving dinner with the Berry brothers after this game. Like, can you imagine whoever wins this game, like how that conversation goes at Thanksgiving? Like, so.
Well, beat your ass, bro. If we're looking, okay, let's look at this Eagles team, because I come on your show quite often on 97.3 ESPN, and I, as far as my admiration for a quarterback outside of Cleveland, it doesn't get much higher than Jalen Hurts. I think this guy still has another level he can reach. And it's interesting because of the, we'll call in quotations a down year, the end of the year, the bottom fell out. But still, the organization is built that there's stability. And Jalen Hurts, I feel from the outside of the Philadelphia Eagles fan base, Josh, that Jalen Hurts is being overlooked for all the new shiny toys, the Caleb Williams, the Jaden Daniels, Aaron Rodgers coming back, all these other, and it's like, wait a minute, Jalen Hurts is still like really good. Joe Burrow coming off of injury. Do you feel the Eagles, as much as they can with the roster, how it is, are being overlooked in some degrees from a outside of divisional opponent level?
100%, because it's not just because it hurts. And, the narrative keeps changing. Is Hurts a good quarterback? Is he not a good quarterback? Is he a franchise quarterback? Is he not a franchise quarterback? Is he overpaid? Is he underpaid? It just keeps moving. But at the end of the day, the quarterback is only as good as the talent around him. Okay. Yes. You in Browns country know that some of the teams you guys have had, you've had great offensive lines and bad quarterbacks. Then you had some good quarterback play with some bad talent around you, right?
Sure.
So it's like Jalen Hurts has an elite group of players around him.
Right.
All he has to do is not screw this up, right?
Don't do too much.
Right. It's like, if anybody's ever seen like the Marvel movies where Doctor Strange, tells Tony Stark in Avengers, if anyone, don't screw this up,
Right.
Because they're basically having like this, ego match going on in the movie, even on the same side, which is hilarious. But anyway, back to the football. It's the idea that it's not that Hurts would screw it up, but you're literally just saying, I don't need my quarterback to mess this up. Jalen Hurts in his last 50 starts has fewer turnovers than Josh Allen and Dak Prescott. So Hurts doesn't turn the ball over a lot. He had more passing touchdowns and rushing touchdowns last year than his MVP season. So he wasn't the problem last year. Now, the question with the Eagles is going to be the team, right? You have A.J. Brown, you have Devonta Smith, arguably one of the best tandems in the NFL.
Yeah.
Kellen Moore is your new offensive coordinator. He is a coach who uses the tight end. In Kellen Moore offenses with the Cowboys and the Chargers, they average almost 8 catching touchdowns per season with tight ends. Dallas Goedert and the Nick Sirianni offense has averaged last 3 years only 4 touchdown catches per season. So we know Goddard, for you fantasy football players, his value should go up.
I was going to say, is the arrow fantasy football wise, because Dallas Goedert is a name I feel that, again, people are sort of forgetting about. So that's somebody we should be keeping an extra close eye on past that first tier of, and really, Josh, a quick sidebar. If you look at the fantasy tight end group, it's no longer just like, Travis Kelce. No, like he's there, but he's not. And is it Sam Laporta? What about the young tight ends? Is there a bit of a change? It's much more muddied at the top, and maybe it's more not a top guy, but that it's lowering to sort of a middle ground. And boy,
yeah, it's like the top came down to the middle.
Yeah, right? Like, and so I think you could probably get some good value on a Dallas Goedert on your fantasy team.
I'm telling you right now, Goddard is going to be a fantasy guy this year because, again, Kellen Moore loves to use tight end. And go back and look at the names he used in Dallas. Those were not superstars once Jason Witten left.
Right.
Jake Ferguson, for goodness sake. I mean, that dude was scoring touchdowns left and right. Even when Justin Herbert went down with the Chargers last year, the Chargers tight ends were still scoring touchdowns with Easton Stick, So it's like, Jalen Hurts is better than Easton Stick. Okay. I think Goddard's going to get some good touchdown targets this year. So
I love that. Okay.
That's the receivers. And then you got Saquon. And the analogy I've used on 97.3 ESPN is, for those of us old enough to remember, Marshall Faulk was on a bad Colts team before he got to the Rams. He entered the Rams that had Torrey Holt, Isaac Bruce, a really good offensive line. He went from a meh Colts team, because remember, Faulk was drafted before Peyton Manning ever got there. Okay?
Yes, that's right.
He was drafted before Peyton. So when he got to the Rams, he became a league MVP, but he became a league MVP part of a great offense. I'm not saying Saquon's going to be a league MVP, but Saquon is going to be with the best quarterback, the best offensive line, and the best supporting cast he has ever had.
Absolutely.
When it comes to the Eagles and Jalen Hurts and the roster and everything, why are we worried about Hurts when the rest of the league should be worried about how we're stopping A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Saquon Barkley, Dallas Goedert, 3 of the top offensive linemen at their positions, Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, and Landon Dickerson, all voted among the best of their positions by NFL executives, coaches, and scouts. Not you and me. People who work in the league.
People in the league.
All Jalen Hurts has to do is say, I am orchestrating. I am distributing. I am Jason Kidd in basketball. Whatever analogy you want to use, that's the Eagles offense. And so I think that is the part that gets overlooked, is because guess what? The Eagles have the same betting odds as the Buffalo Bills to win the Super Bowl. The Eagles roster is way better than the Buffalo Bills.
Especially on offense, Josh. Do you see? And I want to say this too. Jalen Hurts doesn't have to play hero ball like Josh Allen. Josh Allen with that wide receiver core, good luck. Like he's going to have to. I don't know who he's throwing. Khalif Shakir? What? Like that's your guy?
Hollins. Former Eagle Mac Hollins is up there.
Okay. Cool. Jalen Hurts doesn't.
That's why they drafted Keon Coleman, right? That's why they drafted Coleman.
You know what's so funny? I taught one of my good buddies, Carlin Gay, works for the NBA down in Charlotte. Yeah. And he's from Canada, but he's down there. I was drafted. I was like, hey, this Coleman guy looks pretty good. He's like, Andy, man, he's like, Bills fans are pissed. He's like, this guy's got bricks for hands. He can't move. I'm like, oh, okay. Maybe you're not so. We'll see. But listen, Bills Mafia ain't so bullish on old Coleman. But let's look at this too. Jalen Hurts, we're almost talking about him as that he could be a game manager in certain situations. But the difference is this guy also is a weapon, and he's a smart weapon. He doesn't run stupid. He runs. He doesn't run to get hurt. 15 rushing touchdowns last year, 13 the year before. So you're in close. he could still run. That's your extra wild card weapon. That's why you can't hone in on just A.J. Brown or just Saquon Barkley.
I will say, though, don't bet on the tush push so much this year.
Yeah, that's got to be getting fit, right? Yeah.
Well, it's first of all, no Jason Kelsey. He was the catalyst for that tush push. And Brian Baldinger has said that Jason Kelsey probably had the greatest lower body strength of any center in the NFL.
Wow.
Tired. So that kind of gives you an idea how that tush push was effective.
Right.
And, you know, that was I won't say a fabrication. It's kind of a negative, but that was kind of like the brainchild of like Shane Steichen and Nick Sirianni's offensive setup. That was not a universal idea. So I'm not saying they're going to completely get rid of it, but Jalen Hurts himself said that 95% of the playbook is new for him under Kellen Moore. So
new.
Yeah. So this is not going to look like last 3 years of offense. And what is Kellen Moore like? Up-tempo, efficient. That's what everyone keeps saying. Up-tempo, efficient. So when the Browns come to Philadelphia for that game, Jim Schwartz's defense is going to be tested because Jim Schwartz got to pay very close attention to the first 4 weeks of the Eagles season. Because when week 6 comes around, the Eagles coming out of the bye, the Eagles will not just know their own mistakes as Jim Schwartz will know, but they'll also know the adjustments. So now it becomes a chess match. Who becomes the better chess master? Is it the veteran, wily Jim Schwartz? Used to be the Eagles defensive coordinator, by the way.
Assistant coach of the year, by the way. Reigning assistant coach of the year.
Super Bowl champion with the Eagles.
That's right. Yeah.
I can do tip for tap with you. I can do this game.
Yeah. Look, I love that we got him. I love that we got Jim Schwartz. Absolutely. That's going to be really interesting.
By the way, for Browns diehards, did you know Jim Schwartz's first coaching job was with the Cleveland Browns?
That's right. Yep. It was essentially a glorified gopher job with Bill Belichick.
That's correct.
How about that group? You had Nick Saban, you had Belichick, Phil Savage was in there too, former executive. Boy, Schwartz, like what a crew. I'm like, and then you move the team, you dead bastard, Modell. God. Don't get me worked up on friggin' Art Modell guy. Anyway.
My larger point was that Schwartz versus Kellen Moore is going to be a fascinating chess matchup.
That's going to be really cool. And especially, too, you can't go off of previous experience with that offense because it's a new offense with Kellen Moore in there. Fantasy-wise, let's take a look at what we should maybe expect out of a Kellen Moore offense when it comes to the running game, because you have Saquon, and outside of that, like, I won't say the bell cow because you do have Jalen Hurts who can also run. Gainwell kind of has that bit of a change of pace, right? But really, the lead back, touch-wise, if it's not Jalen Hurts moving, it's going to be Saquon, right?
Yeah, I mean, Saquon's going to be the primary back. As I said, you just mentioned it. You can't go off of previous results for the Eagles, how they used DeAndre Swift and Miles Sanders in the past. But what we do know is that under Kellen Moore, 3 of his 4 years in Dallas, they were a top 10 rushing offense. So Kellen Moore is not afraid to run the football. It's not like you got, people are trying to paint Kellen Moore as he's a pass-only guy, right? And it's like, no, he's not. I don't understand why people are so obsessed with every new young coach is pass. Kellen Moore showed you that when you give him running backs like he had in Dallas with Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard, he used them. Now, if you want to say that, well, Moore didn't use Tony Pollard enough, that's another feather in the cap for Saquon. I will say, though, Saquon, he said in an interview on the Kelsey's podcast, he joined Jason Travis Kelce a couple months ago, and he said that one of the reasons why he came to Philadelphia is because they looked at him as a weapon, not as a running back.
As a weapon.
You could be looking more like a Christian McCaffrey in a 49ers offense type back than let's say a Joe Mixon in the Bengals type offense.
Right.
You're not seeing him as much of a pure running back. So, I think the over-under for Saquon this year is 1055 rushing yards, right? So, he might get 1,200 rushing yards, but then he also might get 800 receiving yards.
So we need to look at all purpose. Yeah.
Right.
For him, which is great, especially for PPR if they're using him out of the pass game a little bit too quick, and those quick little outlet passes, right? Use the tight end. Quite often, if you're using the tight ends in an offense, you're also utilizing the running back to get the ball out quick.
PPR is key. PPR is key because remember the other part of Kellen Moore's offense, as I mentioned, use the tight end a lot in the red zone. Not as many rushing touchdowns for Elliott and Pollard during the Kellen Moore years, because Kellen Moore, for people who don't remember, he learned from Chris Peterson, who was an air raid disciple, right. And Kellen Moore learned from Scott Linehan, who came from the Greatest Show on Turf, Mike Marks school. So what do those offenses have in common? Not a lot of rushing touchdowns at Boise State. Not a lot of rushing touchdowns in the Air Coryell offense. Not a ton of rushing touchdowns in the Mike Martz offense. But what they do have? A lot of red zone efficiency. Why? Because what they do is they basically spread you out and say, stop this, mofo. Like, stop us now. Look at what we're doing. We're running you 20 ways from Sunday with 20 different motions. You don't even know who's going to get the ball. And then you realize where you set your defense, there's already a ball in some random person's hands in the end zone.
Or Jalen Hurts running it in.
Or that too.
Right. That's the other option. At the wide receiver group, A.J. Brown, WR1, no question. Devonta Smith right underneath him. Fantasy-wise, where are you looking at an A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith? Is A.J. Brown a first-round pick for you receiver-wise? Depending on the rankings you see, sometimes he's high second. Personally, I think with the distribution, I feel comfortable having him as my top wide receiver.
So I think when it comes to fantasy, that you have to ask the question, who are you taking him over? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it's like nobody's not drafting Justin Jefferson, right? Nobody's not drafting Jamar Chase, right? Mm-hmm. No one, like, if you're stupid, you would have to draft Mike Evans. You know what I mean? Like, those are guys that you know what you're getting. So maybe you're not drafting Brown over those guys necessarily because maybe you have a preference or how you're building out your roster.
Right.
But let's say you have like the 8th pick in the first round. I'm just throwing out a random number, right? You're a first round draft pick in your fantasy draft. You're taking A.J. Brown over Deebo Samuel at this point.
Absolutely.
You're taking A.J. Brown over Michael Pittman at this point because you don't know what you're getting from Anthony Richardson. No. Coming off that injury. I
take him over Amon-Ra St. Brown. I love Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I'd take him over him right now.
I mean, the Amon-Ra St. Brown thing, I think, depends on how do you view Jared Goff. Like, Jared Goff had the best red zone efficiency in the NFL last year. So,
and he's steady. He doesn't get he's not he's not a Hall of Famer, but that guy's he's a known commodity, and you can count on what you're getting. There's not a mystery.
He's a better version of Drew Bledsoe at this point.
Yeah. I'd say that's kind of that kind of Andy Dalton, a better Andy Dalton like that. He's good enough, and he can distribute the ball.
Exactly.
I'll tell you this though. Let me tell you this. Personally, and I've been going over this in my head. I think right now, Josh, I would take A.J. Brown over Justin Jefferson because of the quarterback situation in Minnesota. I can't trust Sam Darnold, who sees ghosts, and I don't like J.J. McCarthy, who's Mac Jones with a better haircut, instead of him. That's not Justin Jefferson's fault. You put him on this Eagles team, my God, he's going to break records. How can I trust Sam Darnold or that other bum throwing him the ball on my fantasy team? I'd rather take my chance with A.J. Brown.
I hate to be the guy defending Sam Darnold, but I do have to say that Kyle Shanahan apparently rehabilitated him. So they're apparently, according to all reports, Darnold looks so much better than McCarthy in camp. Like, apparently, like, he has picked up the Kevin O'Connell offense almost immediately because of what he learned from Kyle Shanahan.
Right. That's on the same tree.
And, like, apparently, like, he is so far ahead in the offense than McCarthy. Like, there's even questions now up in Minnesota, like, will McCarthy ever see the field this year? Like, that's how crazy it is. So, like,
wow.
Darnold apparently at least knows the offense. So he might see ghosts, but the ghosts might help him with the passing. You know what I mean?
Ghosts might help him. It might be the good ghost. Look, I'm going to
friendly ghost.
I will be on the side, Josh, of erring on the side of doubting Sam Darnold until I see he can. And we might be on the show week 6. You come back on, and I'm like, well, hell, man, Sam Darnold's lighting it up. Good on him. I got nothing against the guy.
Pick up Sam Darnold.
Waiver wire pickup Sam Darnold. Could we see that? Could that be a world? Maybe.
You heard
And
it
if
here
it
first on the
and-
Sick Podcast.
Look, and if it is, and Justin Jefferson's probably going to be just fine. Devonta Smith, though, that's where it finds me interesting. Dip from the year before receiving yards wise, but overall, we know still a hell of a talent. Where do you put him fantasy wise? Certainly not a WR1. Is he the next year WR2, 3? What are we feeling there?
He's definitely in the WR2 range. The question is, though, like, what kind of volume is he get the Kellen Moore offense? Because, like, Kellen Moore, he's all about pushing the pace. So, like, there's not a natural one guy who's always going to get the ball. But, like, we know that 2 years ago, Devonta Smith set the Eagles franchise record for most receptions in a season for a wide receiver. So we know what he's capable of across from A.J. Brown. And A.J. Brown doesn't have this ego where he's like, I need the ball or else, you know.
Yeah.
People have to point to A.J. Brown being mad on the sidelines last year. He was mad because there were predetermined throws that didn't even factor him or Devonta into the play. So, Brian Johnson was a college coach. Well, what do college coaches do? Option 1, option 2, run. That's how the offense is built. So now you take that concept to the NFL, and now you're not asking the quarterback to read the defense. You're telling the quarterback where to throw the ball at times. And I heard guys like Brian Baldinger, Greg Cosell, Emery Hunt, like the real film gurus, all talk about those are predetermined throws. So now you're taking the predetermined throw out, and now you're getting more of a wild card. So I don't know how that fully impacts Devonta Smith. So is it like, I would say he's more valuable than Chris Godwin of the Bucks. I would say he's more valuable than like a Terry McLaurin down in Washington. I would say he's more valuable than who is even the number 1 receiver in Pittsburgh. I don't even know at this point. Like, do you know?
You got you know what? Let's look that up. I spend most of my time hating the Steelers and Ravens so much that sometimes I get distracted from their roster.
Steelers, they got a new coordinator, new quarterback.
Two new quarterbacks. Who do we got? Oh, George Pickens. Pickens is their guy.
Okay, maybe you would take Pickens over Devonta just because of the
Pickens
upside.
is pretty good.
Just because of the upside.
And they got Roman Wilson.
Well, I knew they had Wilson, but I wasn't sure like who else. Because I know they traded Deontay Johnson.
Yeah.
Because he was a problem child, like Chase Claypool was. So
Chase Claypool,
Chase Claypool
from Canada.
You know what team he's on?
What? Who's he on?
Bills.
Good luck, Buffalo. Chase Claypool's a Canadian. I was rooting for the guy. He's an idiot. That guy's a wannabe Juju Smith-Schuster TikToker nobody.
As Ryan Reynolds would say, he's an embarrassment to Canada.
He is an embarrassment to Canada. Chase Claypool. Get the hell out of here. Anyway. You
So,
get me fired up, brother.
Like Devonta Smith, it's kind of like he's definitely a WR2, but like how high on the WR2 is he? I think depends on, like, for example, if you're in a PPR league, he's way more valuable than a standard league kind of situation.
Yeah.
I think that is for sure. But it's like you look around the NFL and look at who are the WR. Like, for example, Puka Nacua is a borderline WR1 because of the volume.
Aren't you feeling though? Doesn't that just stink of regression? Like, aren't you getting a big whiff of that? Like, everyone's going to overdraft Puka. Like, I'm not saying I don't want him on my fantasy team, but I'm just very wary of. I think it's like, okay, this guy came out of nowhere, and we see a lot of the time, guys come out of nowhere, then you get figured out, and you're not surprising anybody.
Puka Nacua is going to be overdrafted, but it's going to be similar to when you overpay for your vacation and you realize that you need the vacation, you need to go where you want to go, you're happy where you want, you're happy with the result of vacation, but there's still a part of you that's like, let's pay an extra $500 first class.
I could have got a deal. Yeah, I could have got a deal somewhere.
I could have gone to like one of those discount websites. They're not an advertiser. I don't want to give them a free plug. So, one of those discount websites instead of going through like my buddy's travel agency. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Well, let's counter that with where we see the Browns wide receivers and Amari Cooper. We'll go on the assumption they get the holdout figured out. They will. Andrew Berry's a wizard. They'll figure that. Amari Cooper's fascinating to me because he's so consistent, but the last 2 years at the end of the year, he has got injured. He's reaching his age. He's 30 years old now. That doesn't necessarily mean the end of the world, but it's something to keep in mind. He's, I think, a rock steady WR2. So let's take him for a comparison with Devonta Smith. You have him in an offense that is going to be super pass heavy and focused around Deshaun Watson under Ken Dorsey. And Amari Cooper, at least right now, is going to be the main target. They have Jerry Jeudy, who's going to be fighting brought in. I'm huge on Cedric Tillman as well, and you have Elijah Moore. But Amari Cooper is going to be the top guy on paper. So where do you compare those two? Smith, who could be the 2, and we have to remember, like you said, you're going to get more. You're going to get increased targets to the tight end spot too.
Yeah, I'm going to assume that Cooper gets more targets this year than Devonta Smith. Like not like extremely more, but like I'm just throwing out a number. Like if Amari Cooper gets 150 targets this year, right?
Right.
And then like Devonta Smith gets like 120 targets. Like there's enough of a gap there for the PPR people to realize that if you're picking between Cooper and between Smith, that Cooper's probably your better pick. Because also the other thing with Cooper is that he's probably not going to get more targets. He's probably going to get more red zone touches. So
right.
I'm assuming that if I were to, I'm obviously projecting this. Sure. I don't have any inside information, but I'm assuming Amari Cooper is probably like a 90 catches, 1,300 yards, and like 10 touchdowns this year. Whereas Devonta Smith is like probably like 5 less catches, 4 less touchdowns, and maybe 100 more yards.
Right. And he had Amari Cooper best year. Is it his career? It is yard-wise. Wow. I didn't realize. I knew it was the best as a Brown, but 1,250 receiving yards, tops in his career in 15 games because he missed the last couple with the heel injury. Only 5 touchdowns. The year before was 9. And targets was 128 and 132 last 2 years. But again, similar to the Eagles, this is going to be a Ken Dorsey offense where they are ratcheting up the passing game. So that could go up.
And really quick with Amari, people forget that, he was the best receiver with the Raiders, but those Raiders teams were meh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when he got to Dallas, he was like one of the weapons, not the weapon.
Right.
So in Cleveland, he's more of the guy instead of a guy.
Right.
That's kind of how I look at Devonta Smith as different. Devonta is one of the guys. Amari Cooper he's going to get the other team's number 1 corner, but he's also going to be Deshaun Watson's first look.
Right. And we saw when Watson was in there last year, he looked Amari Cooper's way early and often. So we'll see how that goes. All right. Let's finish with this. Browns, Eagles, week 6. Let's hope everyone's healthy and all that. Early prediction. Where are you going with this game?
Whatever the over-under is, take the under. I think that people don't realize the Eagles defense will be significantly better than it was last year.
Yeah.
New defense coordinator Vic Fangio. Even the young players love him. Like Jalen Carter is saying, I love his old school mentality. He's really going to hold us accountable. Yeah. Like when you have
old surly guy.
When you have the young guys buying in already, that's a good sign, right?
Yeah.
So the question for the Browns, like if I was to do a keys to the game 3 months ahead of time, basically,
right,
is Amari Cooper, who matches up with him? Is it Darius Slay? Is it Quinyon Mitchell? Is it James Bradbury? Like, who's the guy who faces him? Because that means Jerry Jeudy gets the other guy.
Right.
So the question is, who can win their matchup better?
And let's not forget David Njoku, who's covering Njoku as well.
Probably CJ Gardner-Johnson, so he'll be neutralized.
Yeah, damn. I like Gardner-Johnson.
By the way, CJ Gardner-Johnson is going through a massive maturity thing. So he is now mature CJ, which is even more dangerous because before he was stupidly talented CJ, now he's talented and mature CJ. So now
that's a nice,
that's going to be a huge, because remember Darius Slay said on the Green Lake podcast with Chris Long, he told Chris Long that one of the problems they had last year was that the safeties were so young and inexperienced that they didn't have good communication. He says CJ Gardner-Johnson talks the entire game. He never shuts up. So apparently CJ over communicates in game. So that secondary is going to be way better this year than it was last year. And if Devin White is half the player that he can be, you're talking about an improved linebacking core. And Jalen Carter, I mean, that explains itself, right? So
year 2 for Nolan Smith Jr. as well, right?
Well, there are a lot of Eagle players, not a lot of people, a lot of Eagle players saying that they think he's going to be a breakout player this year.
Yeah.
So,
the talents that was the not this draft, the previous draft. Me and you were talking like, how the hell did he get, him and and Jalen Carter? How the hell did he get both guys, right? Like,
I mean, so if you're the Browns, you got a lot of stuff to worry about going into that game. And that's why I'm going to assume, if I had an early prediction, it's a low scoring game. It's probably like, 21-17, 24-21, one of those kind of affairs where it's like, the kickers are going to determine the game, which means the Eagles will win because Jake Elliott is better than your kicker.
Well, we just signed him a 3-year extension, Dustin Hopkins. Career year last year, Dustin Hopkins. 3-year extension.
Jake Elliott gets paid more.
Well,
look it up.
Yeah. Well, he did. They did say top 5, so I guess there's 4 guys ahead of him. I guess one's Jake Elliott.
Just Tucker's number 1 paid kicker, and Jake Elliott's number 2.
And Elliott's number 2. Your mindset is that's where I was going to go as well. I think it is a Browns loss. Again, end of a 3-game road trip. Washington to Philly isn't far, but you come Vegas, Washington, Philly, and then you got the Bengals coming up. I think it's a loss for the Browns, though. Like Josh, if you look at that schedule, this is the start for Cleveland, where it's like, okay, you better have cashed in on those first 5 weeks because it gets tough now. Like, you better be like 4-1 after this because or going into that game. Because then you got the Bengals, the Ravens. Who knows what the Chargers are going to be? The Saints stink. You got the Steelers, always tough, and you go from there. So that's going to be a really interesting ball game. I do think it is a Browns loss. That is October 13th, and as you said, the Eagles' only 1 p.m. game of the year at home. Right? That's weird.
Yeah. So if you go through the entire Eagles' home schedule, right, their first home game is Monday Night Football. Then it's the Browns at 1 p.m. Then it's Sunday Night Football against the Jags, which, by the way, who is the turd that didn't put that game on Monday Night Football? I want Jason Kelsey interviewing Doug Peterson.
Yes.
Game. No, it's on Sunday Night Football, so we'll probably get like Tony Dungy doing the interview. It's going to stink, okay? Then after Sunday Night Football against the Jags, you got a Thursday night against Washington, which will probably be interesting by that point. We'll know who Jalen Daniels really is. Then next home game is a 1 o'clock in December against Carolina. Like, who's going to care about that game?
That is a just get the W, move on.
And then the 2 final home games are against the Cowboys and the Giants. As we know, week 18 is always TBD. And the Cowboys game is going to be that infamous Fox 425 game.
The Tom Brady game, right?
Yeah, Tom Brady on the telecast waxing poetic about how, one of the only other teams I ever lost to were the Eagles, but I beat the Cowboys. Like Brady probably has some I'm 10-1 against the Cowboys or something.
His first broadcast is going to be week 1 Browns versus Cowboys, by the way.
That's true.
That's going to be his first game. I'm interested. Do you think he'll be good?
I think he is going to be good because he's Tom Brady. I think the dude is probably in the top 5 most psychotically competitive, prepared individuals of all time. That dude is going to prepare like an NFL game to be in the broadcast booth.
I wonder, though, if he'll try to do, because as we know in broadcast, sometimes it's too much. You can't, you have all those notes. You can't verbal diarrhea all the way out.
He won't be like Romo and like calling out the plays, I think, all the time.
Right.
I think his too much will be like, he'll walk into the game and like he'll like over educate the audience at times. He'll be like John Madden on steroids, with the touch screen and like
the X's, yeah.
And like who's his broadcast partner again? I forget who it is.
Was that Summerall?
What's that?
Oh, are you talking Madden's old one or Brady?
Brady? Who's Brady's guy gonna be?
Oh, damn.
I forget.
Is it Buck? No.
Burkhardt?
I don't know.
Well, whoever it is, I guarantee you Brady's going to be still explaining something, and Burkhardt will have to interrupt him because the
that's what I'm saying.
Already started.
That's what I'm saying.
That's going to happen.
That's what he's going to have to get his reps on. Interesting.
But I think what people are going to realize is that by the end of this upcoming season, people are going to realize that Tom Brady is smarter than you, and you think you know football.
That's the Maxwell Jacob Friedman AEW line. He's better than you, and you know it. That's
Exactly.
That's it. He'll be better at you than at football. He'll be better at you at talking, and that'll be what we all have to deal with Tom Brady. My God.
So true.
Hopefully, no more roast. Josh, where can people find you, brother? Thank you so much as always.
Absolutely. So at Josh Hennig on the Twitter X platform, at Joshua S. Hennig on Instagram. I'm on 97.3 ESPN Monday through Friday, usually at 6 o'clock. I'm the producer for the afternoon show from 2 to 6 as well. And of course, you can follow me on social media for everything I'm up to, whether it's I'm jumping on your show, Andy, or I'm doing or you're jumping on my show. You know, this is a cross-pollination effect we got.
Yes.
So
a collab. Exactly. And hey, you got some cool remotes if you're in the your Browns fans watching in the South Jersey area, right? You're all over the place, so it's great.
Oh, it's very random though. So you gotta kind of follow the station.
You gotta follow.
When I was at the Make the World Better Foundation in June for Connor Barwood, and then we had Bo Allen on the radio, and Bo Allen dropped an F-bomb in the middle of the segment, so we had to dump that. And I had to make fun of him, like, Bo, it's in a podcast, man. You know,
yeah.
He kind of Barwood like punched him in the arm. He's like, bro, like, come on,
like, guy,
radio, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Rein it in, damn it. All right, okay, buddy, good stuff. Thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely, man. Take care.
All right, there he goes. Josh Hennig from 97.3 ESPN Talking Eagles, really breaking that down. I love getting in-depth with these teams. I'm really enjoying doing these team-by-team series because we get to learn so much from guys who cover these teams more in-depth, right? Like we have the peripheral view, and we dive in as much as we can. But Josh is on the home of the Eagles, 97.3 ESPN, and really learning. That matchup come week 6, if everyone's healthy, chess match. I can't wait for it. Healthy Deshaun Watson versus Jalen Hurts. Hopefully Deshaun week 6. Any stupid Russ, he's back. That could be really, really intriguing. That could be a fascinating game. But let me know, what do you think of this matchup? Early projections, of course, week 6. You can leave comments in the chat. Like, subscribe. Hit us up on Twitter X at SickPodBrowns, at SickPodBrowns, at AndyMC81. Follow us there. Instagram and TikTok at AndyMC Sports. Let me know your prediction. Eagles, Browns, week 6. Who's winning? Browns upping, extending Dustin Hopkins. They're kicking for 3 more years, $15.9 million. You like it? You don't? I don't know how you couldn't like it after the season he had. And anything else, your overall thoughts on the Browns as we get one step closer to training camp starting. So big thanks to Josh Hennig. Thanks to producer Shane. I'm Andy McNamara. You've been watching the Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara. We'll be back next week with another episode, another Browns opponent. And until then, go Browns.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.